The president and namesake of Berklee College of Music in Boston, Lee Berk, died unexpectedly on October 21st, 2023. Major press outlets across America and beyond carried the news. Tributes from the global Berkeley community and elsewhere came pouring in, hailing Lee for his visionary leadership of the college, and the idea for a book about him became a necessity. And now we have it. The new book, Lee Berk, Leading the Berklee Way, written by Mark Small with the help of Lee's widow, Susan Berk. And joining me today, my co-host, is my colleague at WBGO, Grammy-nominated drummer, percussionist, composer, arranger, band leader, and educator, and the host of the Latin Jazz Cruise on WBGO, Bobby Sanabria. Great to see you as always, Bobby.
Same here, Doug, and I'm very happy to be with these two distinguished people to give tribute to my alma mater, the Berklee College of Music.
Absolutely. And we're delighted to have the co-authors of the new book, Lee Berk, Leading the Berklee Way, Mark Small, guitarist, noted journalist for many jazz publications, including Downbeat, and guitar player, Berklee alum, working at the college for more than 30 years. Mark, great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Doug and
This
Bobby.
this book would not have been possible without the help of Lee's widow, Susan Berk. So glad you could join us, Susan.
Thank you. I'm glad I could join you as well.
Fantastic. Bobby Sanabria graduated from Berklee College of Music in 1979, and it changed his life forever. Before we talk to our guests, Bobby, tell us why Berklee College of Music and Lee Berk meant so much to you.
Well, it changed my life because it gave me the tools that I use today till this day as a professional musician. When I was growing up, I had a fortuitous meeting with one of my bandmates in high school band, David Carmona, who played trumpet. He had a catalog in his hand. It said Berklee College of Music. He was reading. I go, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh man, this is the school. This is the best school for jazz in the country." And our goal was to go to Berklee, audition for the school back in 1975. I remember I auditioned with Gary Burton, and it changed my life because I wanted to become a complete musician, not just a player, but a composer and arranger. And I became an educator as well. Part of my life is that I've become known as that. And it completely changed my life. I could go on and on, but this interview is about this incredible book that when I first heard about it, as you know, Doug, I got a hold of you right away. The president of the Berklee College of Music, Mr. Lee Berk, when I was a freshman, I believe 1975 is when he came in, inheriting the mantle from his father, Lawrence Berk, who founded the school way back in 1945. He was the disciple of Joseph Schillinger, the Russian mathematician, mad scientist, musician, who in many ways completely changed the name of the game in terms of composition and arrangement. And as far as I know, in 1954, the name of the school was changed to honor his son, Lee. And here we are today. Berklee has become the leading institution all over the world. I don't know how many Grammys have been won by students or nominations, etc. Uh, Movie soundtracks, serious compositions in terms of symphony orchestras have been done by Berklee alumni. And I'm proud to be one of them when we're here with Susan and with Mark, the authors of the book, as you said. And ladies first, I'm going to
Yeah.
Susan right away. Susan, I came into Berklee just reviewing back, looking over the book, skimming through briefly. I came out to the school during a time of incredible, serious growth of the school, with that your husband, the late Lee Berk, initiated. Tell us a little bit of background about yourself. Are you an alumnus of the school as well, or did you?
No, I'm not an alumnus of the school, but music has always been a part of my life. My father, part of his journey, his career, before becoming an optometrist, was a musician in New York City, playing saxophone and clarinet. And music has just been something that has been so much a part of my life. I can't live without it. But it's so curious you came in 1975. That's the year that I met Lee, in
Wow.
May of 1975, and we were married in October 75. And then your graduation in 79, that was the birth year of our second child, Lucy. So
Fantastic.
very significant. But no, I was living in Boston. And I was working for the John F. Kennedy Library as an archivist. And it was a blind date, actually. A friend of mine met Lee and asked Lee if he would like to meet a nice woman, a girl. And he said yes. He took my number. And the first date was a Berklee concert. Michael Gibbs, was conducting original works, and Alma and Larry Berk were sitting behind us. And it was a magical evening. And Lee and I had so much in common. We were attracted to each other in so many ways. And 5 months later, we were married. So and it lasted 48 years of marriage, a beautiful collaborative marriage with music being the thread.
That's incredible because you saw me at that concert. I was the percussionist with the Michael Gibbs Chrome Waterfall Orchestra.
Oh
I was
my
on a,
gosh.
I was on a big riser playing a
Yeah.
multiple set of congas, timbales,
Yeah.
Brazilian percussion, Afro-Cuban percussion. So that's an incredible, you know, things happen for a reason. That's
They
amazing, amazing.
do.
Now, up until that time, did you know of the reputation of the school? Did you have any idea what the school was about?
No, that is such a great question because I had no idea. I was living in Boston for 3 years prior to meeting Lee, and I was more in the arts and history field. And when this woman, Ruth Posen, told me she met Lee Berk and was fixing me up with him, she said Berklee College of Music. And I didn't know what it was. I hadn't attended a concert there. I didn't know about it. I had never heard of Lee. So this was really a new exploration, a new meeting.
When you saw that was at the then newly minted concert hall because I remember when it was first starting to be when it was being constructed. Uh, so when you got there, were you like impressed and you go, oh my God, you run this place, you know, like
Yeah, I was so impressed. In fact, Lee gave me a tour of that concert while it was in construction. And we were walking on planks and there was water there. It had really fallen into decay, that particular theater, which had been a former movie and vaudeville theater. And
right.
how they transformed it with the beautiful wood, and Alma had selected green as the color for the seating. And I was very impressed with Berklee and the buildings and the site on Massachusetts and Boylston Street. And more importantly, in addition to the physicality, I was impressed with the people I met. And
Right.
those people dedicated to music, the talent, the enthusiasm, the creativity, the internationalism of it. It blew me away, really. And I just felt so comfortable there. I mean, Lee made everyone feel comfortable, and particularly me, and introducing me and making me part of his life at Berklee.
Fantastic. Well, I have a nice story with your husband, a personal one. At the very end, I'll tell you it. But I just wanted to ask you really quickly. You said your father worked in New York City. Are you a native New Yorker? Were you born and raised in New York
I
City?
was born and raised in Connecticut,
I got
nearby. We made a lot of trips to New York, a lot of
you. Right.
Broadway shows, and yeah, it was. I had relatives there, and made a lot of trips. So very comfortable in the New
Fantastic.
York area, and the music and that happened there.
Great, great.
My father was in the Henry Jerome Orchestra, and one
Mm,
little known fact is that a former economist who was head of the Federal Reserve, Alan
Greenspan? Alan Green.
Greenspan, was in that same band after my father, and he played saxophone.
Right, right. I knew that little factoid. Fantastic. Now, Mark, your association with Berkeley goes back all these years, as Doug mentioned. How did you come to the school? Well, you attended the school as well as a guitarist, I'm assuming, yeah?
Yes, I was a guitarist and composition major there. I started in 1970. Then I went out on my own for a while and ended up coming back um, as an employee in 1989 after a stint of 6 years in Los Angeles, knocking around the music scene there.
Now, how did you, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say that you are the de facto historian of the school since you've written so much about the alumni, the school's development, progress, etc. What can you tell us? I mentioned slightly about when I came in 1975, there was not, now looking back, it was a cataclysmic change that happened at the school in terms of its growth. Tell us a little bit about when you were a student back in 1970 and then when this growth started with Lee.
Yeah. Well, in 1970, there were probably 800 people there at most, and most of them were men. There were a few ladies there, but the ladies came and joined later. What really happened that lifted things off was the embrace of popular music instruments, and of course, jazz was the legacy of Lawrence Berk in starting the place. He wanted to have an institution that could grant degrees in American music styles. And jazz was the backbone of what he was teaching. And that in 1945 and up until the 70s when I got there, that was kind of disparaged by other conservatories and university music programs. So Berkeley was an outlier. And when they embraced these more popular styles and more American rooted styles, as well as embracing electric guitar as a principal instrument, that kind of pushed them to the fringes of music education. But all the innovations that happened under Lee's presidency, when he became president in the spring of 1979, uh, turned the tide so that there have been many followers who formerly disparaged Berkeley's curriculum. They all became converts and they adopted those programs at their own schools.
I have to jump in here because Bobby and I are both lovers of history, as well as you are, obviously, Mark, with this book. Susan, the diaries of Alma Schleger, Lee's mom. You have access to these diaries. So that's a real nice dive in, a window into the early days of this marriage that produced Lee and you got a real sense of even when they first met. You talked about when you first met Lee, you get an understanding of how smitten Alma was when she met Lawrence.
Absolutely. They have such a love affair. I remember on the 50th anniversary, he sent her 50 roses and he had gold medal charms made for each of them with the Roman numeral and the date. And they wore those gold necklaces on all the time. They were totally smitten with each other and had a romantic love, love affair throughout their more than 50 years of marriage. And Alma actually worked with Lawrence at the period in New York City. She did a lot of his notations and transcriptions and all. So, yeah, it was an incredible inspiration. Love,
Tell
love.
us a little bit about Lee's father, Lawrence. I know that he had attended MIT and had graduated from
Graduate.
MIT. What was he doing studying at MIT if he was such a lover of jazz?
I think it was that old adage that maybe you couldn't make a life in business in music, and so he had the talent. I mean, he had the smarts. He was a brilliant man. I think right and left brain, absolutely. And he was a natural to study architectural engineering, and
Mm.
he was a good student. And later in life, he developed in a neighborhood in the Newton area. They built houses, so he was an entrepreneur. He had many qualifications, and I think he worked on radar for Raytheon during the war too.
Wow.
So, but I think it was the idea of making a living, having a steady income. But while he was at MIT, he was always gigging, and he was called the best dressed man at MIT because he would come home from the gigs and go straight to MIT in his special clothing,
It's
his,
tuxedo.
his tuxedo.
Right, right. Well, it makes sense him being at MIT and being a devotee of Joseph Schillinger. Mark, do you know the actual address of the original Schillinger house as it was called back then in 1945?
Yeah, I believe it was 284. What's the street?
Newberry.
Newbury Street in Boston.
Wow. Is there a plaque there that here lies the root of the Berklee College of Music? Is there
There
something?
was a plaque
It
there. I haven't
was.
gone by there lately, but there was a plaque there.
Yes.
Man, that's fantastic. Now I have to go there then. Next time I'm in Boston and take just a picture there. I
You know,
actually,
I think he was great in real estate too. When you think of it today, I mean, the real estate that Berkeley is part of Berkeley College,
right,
which is all the real estate is all owned by the nonprofit college.
right.
But it's amazing what instinct he had to purchase the 284 Newbury Street, and then I think it was the Bryan and Stratton Hotel and the Bostonian Hotel for
Mhm.
dorms and classrooms. He had a really good instinct. Both Lee and Larry were really brilliant people.
Yeah, well,
And well,
in the dorms, I remember they were still being renovated when me and David drove up from New York City. David was a kid from Manhattan. I'm a kid from the Bronx, and we seen construction, and both of us go, "Wait a minute, man, is this the building?" I go, "This is the address, man." I go, "This has got to be it." And we walk in. He goes, "You're in the right place. Don't worry. The scaffolding will be taken away soon."
Right.
So
you
Mark,
know, I want to chime in and say Alma Burke was such a supporter of her husband
right.
in his music career. He had a stable job at Raytheon through the war years, and but since 13, he was a piano prodigy and an
Mm,
arranging prodigy. He was writing charts at 13 and playing professionally. And he went to New York before they were married. Alma stayed in Boston, and he went to New York to seek his fortune there. And he made headway. He was an arranger at NBC and other places that had radio orchestras. But their long distance romance prevailed, and he came back and he married her. And I guess it was about 1938. And they lived there for a few years, but then eventually decided to come back to Boston. And when he wanted to leave Raytheon, Alma supported him wholeheartedly. And when they bought that 284 Newbury Street building, they actually sold some of their personal possessions like jewelry and other things. And Alma was fully behind all this to get the building so that he could start his dream institution.
Mark, I have to ask you, what did you learn? Because you were so close to the Berkeley community as you took a deep dive into this book. What did you learn about either Lee, the family, or the college that you didn't know?
Well, I got to know Lee. I was an employee there as of 1989. I first started working with Alma, so I got to know Alma. Larry had been retired, but he was coming around, and I got to know him too. They were a close-knit family, and they were very devoted to this cause that they had of building up Berkeley. And Lee, who had been to law school, he had gone to Brown first, and then he went to Boston University Law School, got his Juris Doctorate degree, and then he came on board to work at Berkeley in the 70s and became president in 79. What I know about Lee is he was an incredibly intelligent man and a great decision maker. Everybody says, including Gary Burton, who worked very closely with him, that Lee made very few missteps in his decision making to build the college up. And he transformed his father's smaller institution into a world respected college, the biggest college of music in the world.
I would just like to chime in. I think a word I'd like to put in capitals is family, because not only was it family, Alma, Lee, and Larry, and we have wonderful photographs of them together. They're just beautiful, what's in their eyes. And but that is, I think, an element that makes even today Berklee College of Music distinguishes it from other institutions, because I think that's built on the foundation of family. And everyone who is part of, whether they're administration or in the workplace at Berkeley, or student, teacher, faculty, admin, administration, we treat each other as family, and that's a thread, and I think it's a distinctive thread.
And Bobby, wouldn't you say that there's a family feeling among people who are Berkeley alumni?
Oh, yes, most definitely. Years ago, I'm driving in Manhattan. I see somebody with a Berkeley sticker on their rear window. I started honking the horn,
Yeah.
and they rolled down the what? What the hell's going on? I go, Berkeley, yeah. And he goes, oh, you went to school. And then all of a sudden, everybody behind us is honking and
Yeah.
we're having a conversation, even though the light changed to green. I go, anyway, we got to, nah. And the other guy goes, forget about that, man. We went to Berkeley, like, so yes, it's an amazing thing. I would say that this creation of Lawrence and then transformation by Lee completely changed the way modern music is heard today in terms of all fields, not just jazz, but obviously rock, pop music, R&B, whatever category you want. And today, world forms of music like salsa, et cetera, et cetera. It really, uh, I I think that one could truthfully say there's the music industry or the world of music before Berkeley and then after Berkeley. Because and in terms of education, what's the old saying? Often imitated, never duplicated. Uh, so what can I say? But Mark, one thing I wanted to note about Berkeley. Berkeley, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, was the first to really offer a degree in film scoring. Is that
It
is that
was.
is that true?
Yes, there was a series of firsts at Berkeley, and then other majors that they added were so different than the ones that were added at different places that they were innovative in of themselves. So there was film scoring, there was music synthesis and electronic music, uh, and so film scoring, music production and engineering, music therapy, and there had been other music therapy programs, but they all used classical music. And the innovation with Berklee was that they used other forms of music because the patients listened to all kinds of music. That was an innovation. And then finally, the other major that became big was music business and management. And so you can see, to your point, that Berkeley changed the whole scene of music and how it is produced and the whole industry because they educated the people who've gone into top positions in the studios and in film and in management and in all of these other places aside from performing and composing.
One of the things I'd like to say also to publicly acknowledge is that uh, Berkeley not only gave me an opportunity, but others like myself. I'm an inner city kid from the South Bronx, and it gave me an opportunity to do what I do today. I had been offered a few gigs already. Al Di Meola, the guitarist, jazz guitar, had offered me a gig in my freshman year. I turned them down because I wanted to still stay in school and finish my goal, which was to become a complete musician. All my fellow Berkeleyites on my dorm room floor would tell me, "You're crazy, you're nuts," And in any case, my senior year, I had a conversation at the dorm with a gentleman who was a fellow drummer, African American. He had the night shift. That was his work study job, and he's on a practice pad, and we're talking about what we're going to be doing, et cetera, et cetera. And then he goes, "Yeah, man, I just had a lunch with Lee Berk, the president of the school." And I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, I figured I've been here 4 years. I might as well meet the gentleman and this, that, they. You could do the same thing too." I go, "How?" "Just go to the office and make an appointment." So I went to the office. I said, my name is Roberto Sanabria. Everybody knows me as Bobby. I'd like to meet Mr. Berk. And they go, "Is everything all right?" I go, "What do you mean?" I goes, "You have any concerns or anything?" "No, I'd just like to meet him. So I come in, they make the appointment. I show up. Mr. Berk is on his phone. He stands up. Hey, Roberto, hey, I hear you've been doing some great things at the school. How can I help you?" Same thing. He goes, "Is anything wrong?" I go, and I says, "No." I go, I've been here 4 years and I never saw you. I never met you. So I wanted to make sure that really you existed." And he started laughing and he goes, "Well, sit down." And we chit chatted a little bit. He goes, uh, "Have you had lunch yet?" I go, "No." What would what would you like to have?" I, I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, Whatever you like to order. Order whatever you want." I go, and I just flippantly said, "Lobster." So he gets on the phone with his secretary and he orders lobster for both of us. And within 20 minutes, this delivery person comes in with the lobster, and we put on our bibs and we're eating lobster. And he's talking. He spent 2 hours with me. out of his busy schedule. I'm sure he was busy. And I always remember that. So that's the kind of gentleman he was. So I'll always remember. And then when he gave me my degree, he smiled and winked at me and he goes, "Hey, lobster." I remember he,
Lee's door was always open to the
my,
students. He was not an ivory tower president who was untouchable. And that's what I think continues the point that Susan made about the family atmosphere at
right.
Berklee.
Susan, before we let you go, uh, one thing I found interesting, your husband did so much for the music, as Bobby mentioned, but he really probably didn't want to have a book written about him, as you guys mentioned in the acknowledgments. He was a very humble man, wasn't he?
He was very, very humble. Yeah. And in fact, I really feel I broke a promise to him. Okay. Because in truth, I brought up this about having a book and a cell. We talked about end of life sometimes and about the celebration of life and how we want to be remembered. And Lee was so humble. He said, I don't want anything. I don't want anything. And in fact, but everyone who he left behind wanted something to remember him by. And so Berklee did an outstanding tribute to Lee, 25 years in April, with music and words, and hundreds of people came and attended and participated. And then with the book, I had asked Mark maybe just for a family story, a book, maybe a 75-page book that Amazon would publish and we would do it. And Mark agreed. And then Lee died suddenly. And this thought and this request of Mark to work with me built into a 196-page book published by Hal Leonard through Berklee Press. So when I first touched the book and held the book in my hand, I cried because I felt, well, maybe I broke a promise to Lee, but then I smiled because I felt if after he read it, and he was really a rapid and avid reader, I think he would really be pleased with the book because it captured his history. He was so interested in history. In the first chapter, the family history, which Mark researched so brilliantly with the genealogist, and the story of Berklee and the story with our family weaved into the story, that I think he would smile and say, good job, good job.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Bobby, you have the stage here as we wrap things up.
Well, on that note, I think that we should close on that. Berklee at this point has expanded all over the world, bringing the joy of this great art form that we call music, especially America's greatest art form, jazz, and everything that jazz encompasses, because jazz is really the only art form, in my opinion, that draws upon every other art form, but still retains its identity, showcasing the musician as a virtuosic improviser based on African American and African Caribbean traditions that we've inherited to this day. And the legacy of the school, first through Lawrence and then his son Lee and Susan and Mark, is a testimony to the vibrancy of the school and the incredible impact it's had. Berklee has campuses now, I believe, in Barcelona, in my ancestral homeland, Puerto Rico. And Mark, if there's any other places that Berklee is doing outreach to, which the school
Well,
is doing through its outreach on through the internet, people can study courses through the internet at Berklee. Tell us more about that a little bit, real quick, and we'll close off.
That was Lee's final achievement, was to bring into reality the Berklee Online School, which is now the largest online music education entity anywhere. And so that was his crowning achievement before he went out the door into retirement. And it started with the free courses, massive online open courses that were free. And then there were a couple Berklee courses added, and a lot of people, whether they were in Indonesia or Africa or Japan or South America, wherever, they could all get a piece of the Berklee education if they couldn't get there. And
Fantastic. And on that note, my name is Bobby Sanabria. His name is Mark Small. Susan just left us because she had to leave. And we have Doug Doyle here with us here on WBGO, the #1 jazz station in the entire nation, which that means the world. Thank you so much for your time. The book is Lee Berk, Leading the Berklee Way. It's available now on Amazon. You can get it right now. I think this should be required reading of every student that comes to the school. I don't know if you're going to make it available to every student, but it should be. And learn about this incredible historic institution that keeps leading the way. And since Lee treated me to lobster, when you, Mark, come to New York City with Susan, lobster is on me. So please, and that's a promise. So let her know about that. She's just had to leave us right now. Thank you so, so much for everything.
We will take you up on that. Very, very grateful to have been here with you both, Douglas and Bobby.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Our pleasure, Mark. Thanks, Bobby.